And we are live. Welcome to the MMA Strategy Show. It is Thursday, September 29th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined by Pete the Heat Rogers. We are here to break down a UFC card. I don't know how else to say it. It's not exactly an illustrious card this week. I think we're off next week, and then it's another not ideal card, but that's fine. I just want a fight card. That's all I'm looking for. Shout out to PrizePicks for being the sponsor of the video. Make sure you're hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. It's incredible. We're going to talk about 13 different fights on this card. And the most interesting fight that we're going to talk about is the one that just got booked like 20 seconds ago. Bo Nickel getting ready for later on this year. But let's just start here. Pete, what's going on? How are you?
What is going on, everybody? What's up, Josh? Thanks for joining us again. Hopefully one of these days we'll get an actual, talented card to break down and to have another strategy show together. Shout out to Jason. Hopefully he's doing all right down there, dealing with the hurricane and all of that. I know he was trying to, navigate through and make it to the show, but the weather had other plans, and hopefully he's all right down there, and maybe he'll be back for Saturday. We will have to see. But, thankfully we have Josh filling in.
I'm going to do my best. I feel like one of the fighters on this card, like completely unqualified to be here. Doesn't seem like I should be talking about it at all. That's where we're at. But we've got the data at Stokastic.com that will help out tremendously. Data that we didn't necessarily have for every single fight so far. We just got salaries for one of the fights on DK. So that one's going to be a little bit more difficult for, at least for me to talk to, because I haven't run any crunches with that fight included. Won't matter all that much. There are some fights here that I think are going to be really exciting to talk about from a DFS perspective. So it's not as bad as it seems. It's just a little short on name value. It's not the biggest draw card in the world, but still some good fights.
Yeah, it's not bad. There's some intriguing matchups. A lot of volatile matchups. So that could make for some nice GPP lineups and GPP considerations. I don't really love the main event. I'm a big Mackenzie Dern fan.
Same.
I think that her ground skills are unparalleled, and I don't think that's any secret. It's just a matter of if she can get the fight to the mat. And then outside of that, man, it's just riddled with weird fights. Probably the fight that I'm looking forward to the most is Mike Davis against Slava Claus, because I know that's going to be a banger.
It's going to be fun. Let's just dive into it. If you're here, hit the like button. If you're here later, also hit the like button. Let's kick it off. We're going to talk Mackenzie Dern. I'm going to go with Jan because there's no chance I'm going to go with that other name, her other name. My apologies. It's just hard. There's a lot of letters that don't normally go together in my general speech pattern. Mackenzie Dern, 9,100. So a pay up option, like 69% to win. We got our 43% to be top 6. I ran a crunch a little bit over the field on Dern because we've got a couple salaries north of Dern at 9,100. Let's just open it up in general. What are you seeing in this fight? How does this look for you? Because I am, as you mentioned, like you started it off, I'm a big Mackenzie Dern fan. She's someone I want to succeed because the ground game is truly exceptional. It's on a different level than most. And when it comes to just having a skill set that is ultra elite, I'm always interested in seeing how those types of people do.
Yeah, I love witnessing specialists kind of climb the rankings because they're so dominant in one area of the sport. And that's what you get with Mackenzie Dern, one of the best, if not the best grappler inside the UFC throughout male, female divisions. I'm being serious. Like, she's absolutely phenomenal. And, she's so quick to find a finish once it gets to the mat. Her issue is her, lackluster wrestling and takedown attempts. I do think that if I was a coach of hers, I would be hiring some of the best wrestling coaches and takedown artists out there to really refine those skills so it can complement her strengths. The issue is going to be here against Yan Xiaonan is how Yan's probably going to be the better minute winner, and she's going to be on the outside having more volume on the feet, which Mackenzie Dern's, she's improving. Her striking is developing, but it's not her A game. She's going to strike just enough to open up her opponent so that she can go in there and try to get her to the mat. And I do think that Jan's volume could pose problems for Mackenzie Dern, as we have seen in the past. But 25 minutes is so much time for Mackenzie Dern to get the fight to the mat one time. and it can happen in multiple ways. She doesn't even have to land a takedown. She can catch a kick. Jan can give up her back standing. Mackenzie Dern can pull guard, sweep from her back, submit from her back. There's just so many paths to victory for Mackenzie Dern once it hits the mat that it's hard for me not to back her here. Now, the price point at 9,100, I think, is completely fair, because if Jan has developed her ground game enough, perhaps this elevates Mackenzie's takedown totals. And we did see a glaring hole in Jean Noun's game when she fought Carla Esparza, who's much more of a dominant wrestler, less of a submission threat. But I have to tell you, like, as far as like elementary mistakes, Jean Noun was making every single one. And, if Mackenzie gets the fight to the mat, she's going to cut through her ground game like a hot knife through butter. So 9,100, completely fine with it. My only issue is if like she struggles in rounds 1 and 2 or something like that, and then in round 3, 4, and 5 ends up finding the submission. But I think she's just in a great spot.
Yeah. And you would expect at the very least Mackenzie Dern going to rack up a lot of ground control time. If it gets there and she can't find the sub, she's going to have the controlling position.
Yeah.
That much I can guarantee. Whether she can find the sub or not is one thing, but she will control on the ground. That there's no other way around that. It would be shocking. -110 for Dern to win via submission. That seems to be out there at most books. Not a ton of lines fully out there yet. Fight doesn't go to decision. Wow, a lot of D's in a row there for that one. On FanDuel is -220. So it's looking like, Dern round 3, Dern round 4 is the most likely outcome here. And that would likely be by submission. Do you like the path here to go for any sort of underdog play at 7,100, pulling a ton of ownership right now? Now, all of this data is subject to change. There's going to be another fight added to this data. So some of these numbers are going to move around a lot, but 47% ownership here coming in. That seems pretty healthy to me. I'm not likely to get a ton. And I think that this is a main event spot where I'm probably not going to have, like, a lot of the times I'm going to have 100% of the main event, or at least somewhere near it. This doesn't feel like that kind of spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm okay with getting away from the main event. And I do think 47% is completely aggressive. Now, I made a rule for us basically to follow, or like a guideline where, always consider women's MMA underdogs and heavyweight MMA underdogs because of the volatility and the variance within those fights. Now, with Yan Xiaonan, styles make fights. If she's able to keep it on the feet, of course she can have success. It's just like you're going to be sitting on the edge of your seat, hoping that if it even hits the mat, if she can absolutely do everything correct, one mistake and it's over. Yeah. So like, I think 47% is a little too rich. I get it just because of how women's MMA tends to be, but it comes down to, do you believe Mackenzie Dern is for real? Do you think that she's going to keep rising up the ranks, or do you think she's a busted prospect? And there's no reason for me to think that she's a busted prospect. I mean, she's coming off of Hannah Cipher's win, Randa Marcos win, Verna Janaroba, talented submission artist, Nina Ansaroff, who actually, submission win, decision loss to Marina Rodriguez, who looks like an animal, and then a win over Tisha Torres. So her strength of schedule has been pretty decent. I'm not trying to get off the Mackenzie Dern hype train at all, to be honest. And I think this is a nice little leverage spot for a 9,100 fighter.
Do you remember that Dern Torres fight? Do you remember what side you had there? Because that was pretty split. MMA Decision says the media scores basically split down the center. I don't really remember it, so I wouldn't be the best reference here.
I don't really recall either. I thought it was probably going to be a really close fight, and it was. Obviously, it was a split. I'd have to go back, but I think that Tisha, is a tougher test in a way than Yan Xiaonan, just because of her wrestling ability and how she's more well-rounded than Yan Xiaonan. Like, Yan makes really, really elementary mistakes on the mat, and I cannot state that enough. When I went back and I watched Carla Esparza fight, I'm like, that's a submission win for Mackenzie Dern all day long if that situation occurs.
And a loss, or like Tisha Torres isn't exactly dropping fights to people that are strangers. It's Rose, it's right. Jessica Andrade, it's Joanna, it's Weili, like it's Marina Rodriguez. It's everybody with an actual name that can be there. It's not the worst split decision in the world. Anything else we need to touch on here for the main event?
I mean, not
Ooh,
really. I mean, I'll have some shares of Yan Xiaonan. I'll probably be in the 20% range just because of the variance of women's MMA, the 5-round potential, even in a loss. If this somehow is a banger and it goes 5 rounds, you could have a fighter at 7,100 sneak into the optimal lineup. I'm not really, trying to get to too much, and I'd rather, sprinkle elsewhere because I think that there's a ton of other underdogs that can come through this week.
interesting fight. Unrelated, but slightly related. Why do you think the event is closed? Because apparently the Zuckerberg rumor was shut down by Dana White yesterday. We'll know if Mark Zuckerberg's just sitting cage side with nobody else. But
I have no
weird
idea. I mean, that's what I heard as well, to be honest. So, who knows? And then it could have been like, I don't know. When it comes down to money and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but
yeah,
from everything I heard, it was true about the Zuckerberg thing. So, who knows? It could have been asking too much. The closing it off to the MMA media, I think, is the strangest thing. So, outside of a social media platform or something that can, boost their business, I don't know why that you would close it off.
no part of it makes sense to me. I don't get it. And the weirdest part about Zuckerberg trying to do this is just like, why this card?
Yeah, bro. Like, do it to something else. I mean, this card needs all the help in the world. So I don't know. I would not want to watch this. Maybe he's the biggest Mackenzie Dern fan out there. Who knows?
That's one guess. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe it's a China thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a big Yan thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
I got nothing here. I got nothing.
No,
it's
but
just weird.
I'll tell you the co-main event. I mean, from a fighter that I really like, Randy Brown, much more excited to talk about him than some of these other fights.
Are you as excited to talk about Francisco Trinaldo as well, who I feel like has been in the UFC since I was born?
Complete anomaly. He's just doing things that shouldn't be doing, like he should not be doing at his age. And it's quite remarkable how relevant he is in 2022, despite being one of the oldest, if not the oldest fighters inside the UFC and having, a ton of success. He's 28-8 overall. And now you're talking about going up against Randy Brown, who, in my opinion, is one of the fighters on the upward trajectory within the division and could contend for the title one day. Like, I really think that Randy Brown has the skills.
He's really good.
Yeah.
Trinaldo is no joke, and getting rid of him in the cage is not exactly something that people do with any sort of regularity. It's generally a decision. Kevin Lee was able to sub him. That was 5+ years ago at this point. Not getting a lot of other finishes elsewhere. So, like, if you want this win, you got to work for it. Does that make Randy Brown more difficult to want to roster, knowing how tough it is to get Trinaldo out of there?
I will tell you that Father Time's undefeated, but Trinaldo seems like that is a myth. This could be one of the best leverage spots. I mean, because I think everybody's thinking the same thing about Trinaldo, of how tough he is to, put away. I think we're seeing decent ownership to Randy Brown, but whenever you see a fighter at 9,300, you tend to see more ownership than what we're kind of looking at right now. So I'm thinking, in my head, everybody's expecting Trinaldo to be able to survive. And I do think that if you look at his record a little bit closer, Dwight Grant, not really the biggest fan, split decision, low volume. Danny Roberts, not really the biggest fan. Salikov lost. Salikov has looked decent, but I can really go throughout his record, and he's picking up wins over, lower level, decent level competition. But I think Randy Brown is a big step up in competition with who he's been going against. So I think the range of Randy Brown, the size of Randy Brown, and the versatility that he possesses could actually pose problems, and he could actually get Francisco Trinaldo out there. And that might be a hot take because nobody's expecting it, but I really think that Randy Brown's going to knock out Trinaldo. I don't know why. On paper, it looks like I'm completely wrong. I just have this gut feeling that Randy Brown knocks him out.
It's like best line you could find out there is like +240. You can get +300 if you're looking to actually bet it, but somewhere in that +250 to +300 range to win by TKO or KO is out there. That's not crazy. Fight goes to decision is pretty close to a coin flip. So the betting market says, you can see that kind of finish at some point in time. Father Time is going to catch up to Francisco Trinaldo. Could that be right now? It's certainly possible. Was pulling about 25% ownership here. Trinaldo is actually pulling 20. How do you see those numbers if they're going to maintain? Do you see an obvious stand that you want to take here?
Well, I will tell you, if you disagree with me and you think that it goes 15 minutes, why wouldn't you get the Trinaldo at such a low salary? He has shown to be competitive throughout. He seems to be able to take certain shots. He's well-rounded. And Randy Brown, I thought, was going to have a stronger performance than what he did in his previous one against Chaos Williams. It was a split decision. I think Chaos is pretty talented, but I just view Randy Brown in such high regard that I thought he was going to either take him down or hurt him. Pretty similar how I think that, he's going to have success against Francisco Trinaldo. I just think 6,900 price tag. It comes down to, do you agree with the odds? Do you think that Trinaldo warrants being such a long underdog, or do you think that the fight's closer? If you think the fight's closer, 6,900 looks like exceptional value. So 20%, I'd be getting to it to pay up for some other options.
I guess the real question, and I'm looking at his past scores in some wins: 72, 63, 89, 52, 50. Can he do enough? I mean, if to go to Trinaldo, you're kind of thinking we're going to need a lot of favorites to win.
Yep.
And we're going to need a lot of decisions. Because if we start getting the moment there's an underdog finish, Trinaldo's probably dead in the water at that point. Like he's got an uphill battle because he just does not accumulate.
Yeah.
You win the fight pretty easily. Maybe not pretty easily, but you know what I mean? Right. But to get to that score, and that's why we're seeing his top 6 score so low, because he just has not put up any sort of DFS scoring.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tool to look at, because if you're expecting Trinaldo to get 100 points, I mean, go play the lottery. I'm not expecting that. I think that squeaking out a decision is fine. Getting in the 60-point range is doable. He's done it multiple times. It just comes down to the other fights. And at the price point, it could make it into the optimal lineup depending on the other performances. But as you mentioned, we just need all the other underdogs to basically fail for that to kind of work. And if it's a low scoring card, if it's a high scoring card, you could forget about 60, 70 points. He's just not going to be a part of it. So it's a Randy Brown play for me. Yeah. But as far as like 20%, I'll definitely have probably half of that, just because I like Trinaldo a little bit more than what the odds are saying.
Anything else you want to touch on for Brown and Trinaldo?
No, not really. Some other 9,000 options I'm intrigued about. But this is, it should be a Randy Brown win. Like, this is a Randy Brown showcase fight in a way, because if you are what we think you are, you should be able to get a dominant win over Trinaldo, whether you get him out of there or not.
Let's hit on the quick 2 super chats, both from Samuel Campana. Said, first one is, congratulations to Pete on the baby. Congratulations, man.
Thank you, bro.
I saw the tweet.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
Yeah, super exciting thing. Life-changing news, but super exciting. We are pumped. Obviously, our parents are pumped as well, and I can't wait. It's perfect timing.
Highly recommend the name Josh. Just putting it out there.
Look at Tyler saying the same thing too. Yep. You're not gonna have to worry
I didn't
about
even
that.
see it.
I'm not gonna have to worry about that. I'm having a baby girl, so unless I don't think we could twist Josh or Tyler into a girl. I mean,
look, soon enough, it's not gonna matter.
Yeah, that's true.
And then he also wants to know how many cups of coffee am I on today? Over under 4.5. So here's the problem. The answer technically probably would have been the over. I don't know if we're counting decaf, which is the way that I started my day, but I had a dentist appointment earlier today. And my reward after the dentist appointment was to stop by the Starbucks that's next to it. Got a very tall, real coffee. So it's under 4.5 if we're talking about like caffeinated brew. If we're just talking coffee in general, over 4.5.
Damn, that's a lot. It's still early. I mean, you're up grinding early anyway, so it makes sense. Yeah. But
I've had like 40 something ounces of coffee today.
Good Lord. Yeah.
But the first 20 were decaf. So that's just a minute for the flavor.
I think the under hits on that. I think the under bettors would be fine.
I think so too. All right, let's talk Barcelos and Jones. 9K for Ronnie Barcelos, 7,200 for Trevin Jones. Pretty flat from an ownership perspective, 28% on our original run and 20% for Jones. Let's just kick it off with the favorite here. What do you see for Barcelos?
I mean, I like Barcelos. I've been a guy who has always, talked about Barcelos as having the skills to contend for the title one day, or, be in the top 10. But, he had some of his best fights earlier on within his UFC career and prior to the UFC. And you do start to see wear and tear on a lot of these athletes, and he's coming off back-to-back disappointing performances, losing a majority decision to Timur Valiev and then a unanimous decision to Victor Henry, both of which he scored 52 and 59. So what does that tell you? Is he scores a ton of points regardless of the outcome. And I think it's because he's so dangerous everywhere. He throws with high volume. He is one of the best credentialed jiu-jitsu practitioners out there as well. He can wrestle really well, which is what we want from a DFS perspective. We don't always want KO guys, because if they don't find it, it's a bust. We like to find grapplers on the card. And despite his opponent, Trevin Jones, having a wrestling background and picking up some very, very fluky wins, having an overturned knockout win in his debut, short notice debut against Timur Valiev, following that up with another knockout over Mario Batista, two of the most talented fighters within the division, and then losing to Said Yokub, Kakramanov, and Javid Bashrat. It's like, okay, well, what is he? Is he talented? Is he a fraud? Were they fluky wins? I've been saying that they were fluky wins for a while. And then when he, followed up the Timur Valiev fight with the Mario Batista performance, I'm like, am I an idiot, or is this another like did lightning strike twice? And I really felt like lightning struck twice. He hits really hard. So anytime you hit really hard in MMA with the small gloves, anything can happen. But he hits like exceptionally hard for the bantamweight division, which is why he's always live to pull the upset. So 7,200, I don't hate it from like a, pulling off, a crazy knockout perspective for Trevin Jones. But as far as being the better minute winner and just dominating throughout 15 minutes, I think it's going to be Raoni Barcelos. This is a guy who has looked, career worse in his past two performances, but this could be a buy low spot for me. And I know it's 9,000 flat, not really the best salary. I was hoping he was like 8,700 or something, and I was going to be over the field. I still think that 28% is right where it should be, to be honest. I will probably be level with the field just because of his exceptional skills and finishing ability. And even if he can't find the finish, how dominant he can be and pick up massive wins. 110 over Kurt Holloway, 113 over Gutierrez, Joaquin 111, and then 95 against Khalid Taha. The only time that he performed poorly in a win was against Syed Nurmagomedov, who's an absolute stud, and he scored 63. So I'm willing to go over the field or stay neutral with the ownership for Barcelos.
Yeah, they both are pretty close to their top 6 odds. So generally speaking, that probably means you're in and around where you should be from an ownership perspective. Barcelos is plus 360 to win by TKO or KO. The next best line in terms of a finish is actually Jones at plus 600 by TKO or KO. Fight to go to a decision is pretty close to a coin flip, a little bit of a lean towards going to a decision. I think it's just one of those fights where you really wouldn't be surprised to see any sort of outcome pop up here. Yep. Like the ownership is kind of flat. It meets the top 6 odds. I don't even I don't see anything really actionable from a DFS perspective that I would want to touch on. I kind of like all of it.
Yeah, I just like the fight. And whenever I like to fight both sides of it, because I think it's going to be high scoring, I like to go to stokastic.fantasycruncher.com, create a group, and prioritize getting to this matchup. And I do think that it's going to be fantasy points galore, volatile, but I do really like the Raoni Barcelos side a little bit more.
Okay. Anything else you want to touch on here?
No, not really.
All righty. Well, we will talk quickly. Schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up at 2:30, we've got the No House Advantage Thursday Night Football show. Then MLB Live Before Lock kicks off at 5:30. That will be myself and Adam Scher. NFL Deeper Dive, it is Thursday, so we've got Thursday Night Football tonight, Dolphins and Bengals, 6:30 for the Deeper Dive, 7:30 for Live Before Lock, so 2 straight hours of NFL coverage. And if you're looking for any free content today, our MLB projections are free for you. Head on over to stokastic.com to check them out. Next one is an interesting fight to talk about. Slight disparity in the odds. Sadiq Yusuff at 9,500 is like 90% to win this one against. I'm going to go with Don Shainis. Is that correct?
Right. Yep.
Oh, there we go. Nailed it. 6,700 here for Shainis. Not exactly projected well in any facet of this one. Top 6 odds, ownership, what have you. Yusuff looks like an auto win. Will he be able to pay off the price tag?
I'll tell you, it's not an auto win.
And, I like it.
Yeah, it's not an auto win. Don Shane is coming from Massachusetts. I know of him pretty decently well.
Okay.
He is a very good wrestler and a fighter that can actually bite down on the mouthpiece and brawl with you. Now,
okay,
I will say that the skill gap from a striking perspective is significant. I do think that Sadiq is the cleaner, more technical fighter on the feet. He's more of a technician, whereas Don Shainis can make up for some of that skill by being a brawler and being aggressive. And sometimes aggressiveness wins. If you put somebody on the back foot and you can just start throwing bombs at them, they have to respect your striking to a point, which can also open up your takedowns. So I do think that Sadiq Yusuff, being a pretty talented UFC fighter, should clearly be the favorite. But I don't think that minus 900 is warranted. I have to tell you. And this is not bias. This is not New England bias, because I think Don Shainis is what he is. He's going to go out there and fight for the UFC, contract for the UFC bonus. He's already in the UFC, but he wants to make his mark for sure. So he's also trained out of James Krause's gym. So he's no longer just staying in the New England scene. He's been training with James Krause for a decent amount of time now, and picked up 2 regional belts, 2 different weight classes. This is not $6,700 does not reflect his skill. It reflects the opportunity against a UFC veteran, where Sadiq has fought Andre Fili, Gabriel Benitez, Arnold Allen, Alex Caceres, like pretty notable names. And then you look at Don Shainis, you're like, who the hell has he fought? He's fought a guy who's like 16-100 in Jay Ellis, but that's just how it is. Sometimes, like, you don't want to fight these fights or fighters, but when, fighters back out or they miss weight, the promotion scrambles and they just try to keep you on the card. So, like, JLS took that fight against Don Shainis just to keep him on the card. And, I will tell you that, he should probably be like a minus 500 favorite, but approaching minus 1,000 is just a little too rich. I do think that Sadiq will probably get the win here. But like Shainis, even in a loss, 6,700 can land takedowns, can be aggressive, can squeak out some rounds. So, I think that the salaries are just, we're talking about Khamzat Chimaev one week at being 9,500. Are we going to roster Khamzat Chimaev or not? And then now all of a sudden here in end of September, we're talking Sadiq Yusuff at 9,500. I mean, you can't really relate the two. So I will always say that Sadiq Yusuff should be priced lower in comparison to that. But it's a Sadiq Yusuff win, but the pricing's wrong.
What's Shainis's path to victory? If you see him winning this fight, what is he doing to do that?
He needs to put Sadiq Yusuff on the cage and take him down. And It's not like a striking underdog has a limited ceiling. A grappling underdog, I think, has such a higher ceiling and even a higher floor too, just because of, the points. They land a couple of takedowns, they get some top control, and I really think that, you could do worse as a complete long shot. I don't think he's going to get the win, because I do think that Sadiq Yusuff will probably hit him with some big shots and hurt him. But from a scoring perspective, like, I'm telling you, he's surrounded by pretty good fighters at his camp. It's just, the UFC label is attached to Sadiq Yusuff, and the New England scene is attached to Don Shainis.
Do you like Shainis more than Trinaldo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
If that ownership holds, then to me, it's a no question. And I assume Shainis comes in at like the 4% range or something like that.
From a score perspective, I think from a probability perspective, it's a Trinaldo. But from like, if he wins, he's a boom bust play, complete boom bust play down there at the bare minimum.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. When I saw on the back end that could set me straight in whatever I'm thinking just by when I open up that top 6 or the top fighters tool, and you just take a look at it and you're like, oh God, this is going to be a mauling. But like, so the line that we want to look at here, Yusuff by TKO or KO, is around -140, -150, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we're talking a coin flip to finish via strikes. The question then becomes, can he do it quick enough? Or does he do it at like the minute 1 mark and all of a sudden he hasn't really had enough volume and all of a sudden you're not paying off 9,500?
Right. Like, I mean, if I had to like pick how I think the fight's going to go, I think Sadiq will probably knock him out. Yeah. But 9,500, if he doesn't get the quick win bonus, it's like, okay, there's probably going to be some other fighters that pay off their salaries, have close to the same score. And Don's going to test you if he doesn't get knocked out early. So I don't think that 9,200, okay. 9,500, you're starting to, box yourself out, and it's a little restrictive from a construction standpoint.
Is there anything else that we should be touching on here for this one? This is an interesting fight. The rostering of Don Shainis will be something that I'll take a very close look at for the higher level pros to see how they're using him to be different, because I expect him to be the lowest owned fighter on the card.
Yeah, so I will tell you, and just trying to draw parallels between some fights. Howney Barcelos in his most recent fight fought Victor Henry. And if I'm not mistaken, Victor Henry was 60-something hundred, and Howney Barcelos was 9,300. And I was saying almost the same thing, that the price did not reflect Victor Henry's skills. And sure enough, Howney Barcelos went in there, had a very competitive fight, but ended up losing a decision to a 60-something hundred fighter. And that, if you were aggressive to the ownership, even if you double it, say he comes in at 3% ownership and you just get the 6%, you're going to have more options and more lineups with the, top percentage of trying to get to the top, even if it's the most boom bust play there is. So that's where I'm okay with just taking an aggressive standpoint and doubling or tripling the field.
All righty. Move on to fight number 5 here. John Castaneda and Daniel Santos, 8,800 and 7,400 here. A more balanced fight. We're talking we have it 65% for Castaneda to win this one, pulling about 27% ownership. On the opposite side here, though, Santos, per our data, just 8% owned in the projected ownership, a much higher chance of being a top 6 fighter. So we're starting to find one of the spots where I'm likely to be over the field here. When I see that top 6 number get a lot higher than the ownership, I generally think that's going to be one of my underdogs that I'm a little heavier on. But talk to me about Castaneda. Talk to me about Santos. What do you see for this fight?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, because it comes down to, if Santos wins, how does he win? And you go back and you look at his record, he finds finishes at a decent clip. So if he's going to do it, I think it happens early. Some round 1 potential. But as far as a skill standpoint and a matchup standpoint, I think that John Castaneda is going to get this done. I think at 19-5, despite, leaving his chin out there at times, coming off of back-to-back wins over Eddie Wineland. Okay, you can throw the Wineland one out the door. I guess Wineland's washed, but then picking up a nice 3rd round finish over Miles Johns, who hits really hard, has phenomenal wrestling, has picked up devastating wins in his own right. I mean, he's the guy that knocked out Anderson Dos Santos, Kevin Natividad. I think that John Castaneda is a very firm win this week, to be honest. I just think that, I haven't seen enough out of, Willie Cat Santos to want to get behind him, outside of looking at the ownership and saying, yeah, that's low. And, I'll probably get a little bit more than what the 8% is saying. But from a matchup standpoint, I think Castaneda has the power. I think Castaneda has the ground game. I just think he's going to have it all. And he's more proven over 15 minutes. So 8,800 could be that salary that's kind of lost in the shuffle. I say that the top end 800, 8,000 is sometimes glossed over. And that's where I like to, get a little bit more aggressive with my plays, just so that I can have a little leverage on the field.
Prop market looks interesting here. Castaneda with the clear edge on the ground is like, call it like plus 650 to plus 750 to finish by submission, where Santos is at like plus 1,500. But the TKO KO odds are pretty close. Santos at like plus 500, Castaneda at like plus 400. That's where, if this thing turns into a little bit of a firefight, you could be buying a cheaper knockout potentially with Santos at 7,400. We have him with 15% odds of being a top 6 fighter, 8% ownership. I love that. Very curious to see how that ends up changing as we get all the way up to Saturday, because all of that top 6 data, all of that ownership data, that's going to be in flux all the way until Saturday, when the lines start moving after weigh-ins, when everything starts to get finalized, when all the betting lines, when all the late money starts to come in. That's when we want to take that final look. But for right now, Santos is a guy at 7,400 that I'm at least keeping my eye on as one of my preferred pay down options. I got a couple others that I'm liking a little bit more, but for right now, that's a spot that I'm putting a little bit of a bullet on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it by any means. I think that Santos probably is better than what he showed in his debut against Julio Arce. I do think that Castaneda is a really tough test for him, to be honest. But I think that the 8% is kind of automatically assuming he's just going to come in and drop another fight in the UFC. And we have seen plenty of fighters bounce back from poor performances in their debut. You can chalk up poor debuts to nerves a lot of times, and also just kind of adjusting to the big show. So I like Castaneda. From an ownership perspective, I can see where Daniel Santos is going to be one of the guys I'll be circling. But yeah, I'm excited for the fight. It's a bantamweight bout that should be pretty action packed.
Let's get to this next one. This is a fight that I have a ton of right now. Mike Davis, and I'm going with Borschev. I'm going to just skip the first name as I have for a couple of these other people. Vyacheslav, something like that. Yep. I should know these names better. Those are way more my people, but I'm not great. These pronunciations are killing me here. I've got a ton of Mike Davis. I've got a ton of Borschev as well. You wanted to talk about this one earlier. Hit me with it. What are you seeing for this one? 8,600 and 7,600.
Yeah, this fight's a banger. It really is. And pretty similar to the Hounty Barcelos, Trevin Jones fight. I think this fight scores well. I really do. So on stokastic.fantasycruncher.com, I will be creating a group, because I think this is a banger of a matchup with two talented strikers. Mike Davis possesses some sneaky takedown upside as well. I think that he can wrestle really well. It comes down to, how does he look when, in 2022, his last performance was over Mason Jones, where he scored 90 points against a very, very talented fighter, but that was back in 2021. And we have seen Slava Claus, look really good in his debut against Dakota Bush. And sure enough, the Achilles heel that I was worried about all along, that I thought, Borschev is possibly an overblown prospect, it showed. His Achilles heel was on full display against Mark Chikasi, who took him to Takedown City. I think Mark Chikasi scored like 150 points or something stupid in a 3-round fight of how many takedowns he had. So the path to victory for Mike Davis is contend on the feet and mix in some takedowns. And we have seen him do that. He went 3 of 9 in the takedown department against Mason Jones. And I'll tell you what, Mason Jones has a better ground game and better wrestling than Slava Claus Borschev. So 8,600 might be one of my favorite plays on the slate, just because I think that he is so talented, and he could even knock out Borschev, and I wouldn't be surprised. But on the flip side, if Borschev can keep this on the feet or get back to his feet as he did on the Contender Series, he has some really dynamite in his hands and dynamic striking. It's a fight that I don't expect to go the distance. If it does, I'm still expecting a massive score. So I'm picking Mike Davis, but I just love the fight in general. And it's going to be one of the most popular fights, I would imagine, just from a violence standpoint. Yeah, I'm looking at ownership right now, and it seems pretty popular, and it's warranted. And I am absolutely fine with both of their ownerships.
Highest paced fight in our data right now, the second highest fight projection behind the main event. The main event is always going to be first, unless there's just other 5-round fights, because 2 extra rounds is going to make the difference. Davis by TKO or KO is like plus 250. Borschev by TKO or KO is like plus 350. Those are the 2 paths to victory here. That's sort of what it's saying. Fight doesn't go to decision is the favorite in this spot. These guys are going to go out there and throw hands, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see. And that's why this is the type of fight that I'm trying to get a bunch of. On the first run that I had, I'm not holding these numbers days away. 56% to Mike Davis. He ended up being my second most exposed fighter, and I still got to 30% of Borschev as the potential underdog. Second most exposed fight overall for me. I love it. This is the kind of fight you're trying to. This is the kind of fight that you wish that you could have as like the final fight if you're sweating something, because it should just be complete fireworks.
Yeah, 100%. It kind of, I mean, completely different, but like I remember when Gaethje and Charles Oliveira was the main, when they were fighting, I was like, I had all of it. I didn't care. Obviously, the extra rounds, and I just had all of it. There was like no way I thought that fight wasn't optimal.
Right. Yeah, it was. You know what you're about to see sometimes, and there's not really a ton of paths out here without these guys just letting it sail. That's always exciting to me.
Oh yeah,
not as exciting as this next fight, unless you got more for Davis and Borschev.
No, I mean, I just from a striker standpoint, I just can't wait to watch it, and I think that Mike Davis is going to just blend everything together beautifully, and this could be one of the best performances of his career. He just has to be careful because Borschev taking it on short notice. We'll have to see coming in, but the paths to victory are definitely there.
Ilir Latifi, Alexei Oleinik, a fight that you feel like probably happened 5 separate times in the UFC at this point too. Just two guys that have been around for ages now. Latifi 8,700, Alexei Oleinik 7,500. Alexei Oleinik has lunch boxes for hands. He's an old man that will strangle you from anywhere. I love the idea of this fight. It's not going to be like the most fun visual fight between these two guys, but I just love these two dudes.
Yeah, I really do as well. I mean, 9-7 for Alexei Oleinik, 8-6 for Ilir Latifi inside the UFC. And, Alexei Oleinik, he's not a bad striker. He's really not. He's wild. He hits hard. It's not his best skill set, clearly. It's his crazy unorthodox submission skill set where, he's able to just find chokes from odd angles, and Ezekiel chokes from everywhere. The issue here is I really don't think Ilir Latifi has a neck to choke. So I don't understand, and I'm being serious. And I think everybody's talking about the same thing. It's like, okay, well, how do you choke this man? I don't know how you choke this man. I think you have to go to some other skill set. I actually have a fighter who has like literally no neck as well. So I know when I'm going against him in training of how I ain't going for my guillotines. I got to go for something else. And I think that's what's going to happen with Alexei Oleinik here. He can find other ways to find the submission win. And I made the rule, and I think we're going to stick to it every single week. Do not discount or count out any underdogs in heavyweight MMA. You just can't. In women's MMA and heavyweight MMA, one big shot, one of those lunch boxes, as you say, lands, and it's over. And I think that the odds are always just too wide because you think you know what's going to happen, and then you don't take into consideration the cardio standpoint for heavyweight MMA. Latifi can go out there, completely gas himself, whether he's trying to keep the fight on the feet or implement takedowns. And next thing you know, old man Oleinik is going to come from behind and pick up a win. I mean, he picked up a win over Fabricio Verdum. So and I'm pretty sure I called that one years ago. So I'm going to, look at the fight, get to the fight. I actually think the fight scores well. I'm still picking Ilir Latifi to win, but this will be one of my most exposed underdogs just because of how he can win this fight. You will have Alexei Oleinik laying on his back with his feet up against the cage, looking like he's dead and like completely tired in between rounds, but he seems to recover better than a lot of these heavyweights. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the ownership, and it's a fight that I'm probably going to get to more of that. I mean, it's okay, but I just think it scores well one way or another.
I basically have it right with the field on both sides. No real lean either way. And I kind of feel good about that. This isn't the type of fight that I want to take a stand on. I just don't trust it. Latifi's like plus 150-ish to win by TKO or KO. Oleinik, obviously significantly better off from a submission standpoint. He's like plus 275, somewhere in that range. Those are the two primary outcomes. Oleinik by TKO, Latifi by submission are both, 10-1 plus type outcomes. It's just like a really weird fight between two dudes that have just been around for a while. Obviously, Alexei Oleinik been around for a very long time. He is 45 years old at this point. Doesn't really seem to be like slowing down. I mean, like he's clearly slowing down, but He's not afraid to get in there and scrap with anyone.
Yeah, I
I love this dude.
Yeah, I like him as well. And for like, if you had like last man in, Alexi Oleinik, Francisco Trinaldo, I'm probably going Oleinik. I mean, to be honest, just because of an upside standpoint, even a decision win, a split decision win over Fabricio Verdum, he threw really high volume, landed no takedowns, and still scored 90 points. So like, he's not a bad fantasy play at all. Yeah, you have to recognize what you're getting into when you roster him, how he can get flatlined and knocked out within the first round. But if he can survive, he seems to be, not the better minute winner, but it's the every minute that ticks off, I really feel like it starts to favor him. Whereas like Latifi is dangerous early.
Agreed. Wow. Alexi Oleinik hasn't had a knockdown since UFC 213 against Travis Brown.
Yeah. And then he subbed him and he scored 138. Like, this fight's going to be madness. I'm going to get to this fight. And I mean, he can knock people out. He knocked out Jared Rosholt pretty bad, but that was back in 2014. So anything can happen.
Right. With his hands, with his just raw power, if that lands on your head, anybody on the planet can go out from it. He's just too big of a man. There's too much meat there.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to watch that fight. There's a chance that it's shockingly awful. Like, Oleinik really is at the end of his rope, and it's like not the best heavyweight fight. But there's also a chance where these guys just go insane. I love it.
Sir. And
it's my favorite fight on the card in terms of like just old school UFC people.
Yeah, this is like you and your friends playing UFC, and you toss the controller to each other, and you randomize your selection, and you're like, all right, I guess we got Lir Latifi, and you got Alexi Oleinik. Let's see who lasts. This
could have been a co-main like 7 years ago.
Yeah, it really could have been.
All righty. We got to talk a little bit about PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of this show. There is a link in the description of the video. If you click that link, make a deposit at PrizePicks. They will match it anywhere up to $100. So if you've only got $25, then they're going to give you $25. They will match it there. But you should put in the 100. You want to get the full match. We've got tools at Stokastic.com that can help you out tremendously. And you don't have to worry about having an optimizer either. Sorry, Fantasy Cruncher, but you're just not necessary at PrizePicks. We're picking player props, over-unders, hit 5 on the same card. You can net up to 10x your entry fee. I got to be honest, I have not messed around with any MMA stuff at PrizePicks yet. I'm going to say yet right now, but there are a couple of very interesting lines out there. Have you had a chance I'm just curious, have you looked at anything at PrizePicks so far?
I haven't today, but I really tend to look at the takedown props.
Okay.
I always look at PrizePicks because I think that there is an edge. And I think that some of the takedown numbers are wrong a lot of times. So
I think there's one wrong right here. Do you think Mackenzie Dern can score a takedown? The line is 0.5.
Yeah, well, I'm taking the over on that. If she's going to win, she's going to score 1. Even if it depends on if they score a guard pull, a takedown, which is like just getting weird. But I'm going to hit over every single time.
Yeah, a half takedown for her seems weird. Ilir Latifi is at 1.5. That scary-ish because he might just get one and then they never get back up again.
I got my favorite one on the card I'm looking at right now, and it's Mike Davis over 2.5 takedowns because despite it being a banger of a striking matchup, I mentioned prior that Slava Claus has a true Achilles heel of his takedown defense. It's a work in progress. I think Mike Davis is going to blend his striking into his wrestling. He's done it before against a better wrestler in Mason Jones, and he went 3 of 9 in the takedown department. I would like to think that he gets to 3 here as well.
All righty. You heard it here first, everybody. There's your PrizePicks picks for right now. Get in while you can, just so they don't move. Go sign up using the link in the description. We're going to move it on to Jessica Penne and Tabitha Ricci. And this is one of the first fights that I'm getting to where I really just don't have much of it on either side. Ricci, 8,900. Jessica Penne, 7,300. Both fighters about 25% owned. Obviously, Ricci a bit more likely to be a top 6 fighter. Penne well below her ownership in terms of top 6 odds. So that's not a spot that I'm getting to. But what do you see in general for this fight?
I think people got to be careful with Tabitha Ricci. I have to be honest.
Okay.
I think from a on paper standpoint and from a potential standpoint, you would look at Tabitha Ricci where she's at in her career, younger fighter, looks to be on the up, whereas Jessica Penne's best days are probably behind her. But I still think styles make fights. And if this is on the feet, I think that Tabitha Ricci kind of pop shot in a little bit. Jessica Penne can throw volume, even if it's ineffective volume. And if Tabitha Ricci goes to the takedown well, as she does in all of her fights, 5 of 10 against Poliana Viana and 5 of 11 against Maria Oliveira, I think that plays right into the strengths of Jessica Penne. So it's like, yeah, Penne will be, welcoming that. And even off of her back, she'll be throwing up dangerous submissions, or she'll be looking to sweep. So I think that the ground game potential for both of them is somewhat going to be neutralized. But also it's like, if you're going into the strength department of your opponent, you're kind of playing with fire. And I think this could be a situation where like Jessica Penne, picked up a split decision win over Lupi Godinez. I don't think that it was deserved, but it just goes to show you that a fighter who has such a dominant ground game in wrestling of Lupi Godinez still ended up in a very close fight. So I'm okay with getting off of this fight from a DFS perspective. And I actually think that Jessica Penne could shock some people and win some rounds and make this close. I'm feeling a split decision one way or another. I just am. And you know my rule. I'm not going to cross off women's MMA underdogs. I'm looking at the ownership and the odds. It seems a little bit too wide to me. Like, yeah, Ricci should win this fight, but I feel like she should be more towards like a minus 180, not, over 200.
It's very interesting to look at the props here. Neither one of them particularly likely to win via strikes, but they have basically the exact same prop lines to win via submission, which is not something you normally see when you have such a disparity in the overall fight line. Ricci to win by decision is minus 115. Penne to do it is like plus 380, but yeah, they're both as likely to win by submission. They're both as likely basically to win via strikes. It just seems like every single bit of that data is saying, well, I guess we're going to say that Ricci wins this by like boring decision, but it feels like there are paths out there for Jessica Penne at 7,300. The question just becomes, is that going to be a good enough score at 7,300? I think the ownership is really my biggest issue. The fact that she's already in a quarter of the lineups is unappealing to me. It just, based on the way the betting line is set up, something's off. It doesn't make a ton of sense.
I mean, I agree with you. I will be probably getting to some Jessica Penne just because of what I said of how I think the fight can go and how it's, leaning in her strength department. But like Tabitha Ricci is a very skilled jiu-jitsu practitioner as well, which is why I think it could be neutralized, which is why I think this fight can be on the feet and be terrible. From a score standpoint, DFS score standpoint, obviously the ceiling that Tabitha Ricci has completely outweighs the ceiling that Jessica Penne has. But, if it's a weird week, man, you could have a low scoring fighter making into the optimal lineup. I'll probably go elsewhere, to be honest. I just think it's just like a, proven veteran against a prospect, if you will. And it's just one that I don't think is going to have the best DFS score. So I'll be matching the ownership. I won't really get to, more of it than what I'm seeing. I mean, I agree with you. The ownership is a little heavy on the underdog.
Yeah. Not that heavy on the next underdog, and that is the spot that I'm getting to. Joaquim Silva in at 8,400, Jesse Ronson in at 7,800. Silva about 23% owned right now. Ronson 12% owned. That's the spot that I'm getting to more than anything else. Talk to me about this fight. How does it stand for you? What are you seeing? How are you breaking it down?
I will tell you that from a on paper standpoint, you look at Jesse Ronson and I'm about to recommend playing Jesse Ronson and you're like, how can you recommend Jesse Ronson? If you go to his box score, he's been awful. Losing to Prazeres, Trinaldo, Kevin Lee, having a win over Nicholas Dalby that was overturned, and then losing against Rafa Garcia, where he looked completely like a fish out of water. And Rafa Garcia just pushes at relentless pace that, broke Jesse Ronson. Now, Joaquim Silva on the flip side is dealing with back-to-back KO defeats. So like when he's losing in devastating fashion. Yeah, Ronson got choked out, but like he's up until that, he lost 3 split decisions in a row. Very, very tough competition. And I think that this is a leverage spot where I'm like, okay, nobody's getting to Jesse Ronson. I'm over the field. I liked him before I saw the ownership. I like him even more now that I see the ownership. And somebody has to win in this fight. And I've been picking Jesse Ronson.
Here comes the draw.
Right. Yeah, right. Oh, goodness. Thanks, Josh. I guess I did it to us. So, Rafa Garcia, I thought he was going to beat Rafa Garcia, and that was a really, really poor take. But I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I'm going to say that Rafa Garcia is going to beat Joaquim Silva because I don't think Joaquim's going to go to the takedown department as he should. He's only attempted 2 takedowns in the UFC, one against Andrew Holbrook. He ended up finding the knockout. He went 1 of 1 against Jared Gordon and ended up finding the knockout as well. So I just don't bank on him to do that. And I think if it stays standing, that he's alive to get knocked out. So 7,800 Jesse Ronson is going to be a play I'm going to go over the field on.
You can get Silva at about plus 350 for knockout, Ronson at plus 420 ish. I mean, that's very, very close. To see such little amounts of ownership coming in, this is going to be one of the spots that I have to pay attention to. He's sorted to the top for me. I have an overwhelming amount of Jesse Ronson. So not that that's ever fun, but the key is basically get your underdog correct and fill it out elsewhere, and you're going to feel a little bit better. It's a lot easier to cheer for the things that are supposed to happen late. Do I like it? No, not so much, but 23% chance to be a top 6 fighter, just 12% ownership. That sort of gap is exactly what I'm looking for. It's basically inverse of Jessica Penne right now, where top 6 odds way lower than the ownership, similar-ish in salary. It's a $500 gap. So that is still a pretty sizable gap, but even still, this seems like the underdog spot I'm going to, unless we see major changes in the data.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And after hearing the data now, I feel a little bit better because I was leaning in that direction as well. So let's go Jesse Ronson.
I know. It doesn't feel like
no.
That's what's really difficult about MMA DFS, because we know what we think is going to happen in most fights. Like there's a reason people are favorites in general. We're probably going to be on most of the favorites, but we have to come onto a show like this and advocate for some garbage because you can't just play as if you have a $75,000 salary cap.
Right. I mean, you think I would be picking half of these fights if I didn't have to talk about them? No, I would just be targeting the ones I felt safe and secure about. And it's like, we're forced to discuss even some of these garbage plays and even some of these, punt plays, if you will. And they're going to come through every now and then. And it's MMA at the end of the day. It's a crazy volatile sport. And anything can happen because you have to be perfect. There are so many ways to lose and so many ways for your opponent to just find that one, method of victory. So that's why I'm okay with getting behind Jesse Ronson this week. If I look like a fool, I look like a fool because where else are you going to get to on this card? I think it's going to be a crazy underdog card. I think 3 or more are going to hit, truthfully. So I think leaving some salary on the table is going to be the way I go about playing this card.
All righty. Let's talk Christoph Jotko and Brendan Allen. Basically a coin flip fight. Jotko is minus 120 here, 8,300 and 7,900. Ownership is a little interesting. Actually, Brendan Allen, quite a bit more owned than Jotko. With it being close to a coin flip, taking that couple extra $100 in salary makes some sense. They've got very similar top 6 odds. Do you have a lean in this fight? I don't love that Brendan Allen is getting as much ownership as he's getting. We'll see how that changes as we add another one. To me, this is just sort of the fight where I want to just be on the opposite side of the ownership, and I don't really have much of a stand for it. It's just with these sort of coin flip fights, I just let the data do the talking for me, and I get away from wherever everybody else is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that at all because I tend to always pick against Christoph Jotko. I just do. I'm sorry, Christoph, but I just always pick against you. I think it's because of his lack of, finishing ability. Like he just cannot finish a fight inside the UFC. I mean, he finished Tamden McCrory, but outside of that, it's almost
if you think that,
yeah, right. Exactly. It's almost like if you think he's going to win, you just bet the decision prop. I think that he's very skilled. He's a good striker. He picked up a win over Gerald Meerschaert by implementing effective grappling, 4-4 in the takedown department, avoided some submissions, decent control time. And that's his way of winning. He's well-rounded, but I'd give him like a B- in every category. It's just sometimes that B- outweighs some of these other fighters with their, weaknesses in certain departments. But I actually do think that the play is Brendan Allen, to be honest. He picked up a win over my boy, Jacob Malkoun, who I really thought was going to pick up a win over him. And Brendan Allen got taken to takedown city. Malkoun landed 7 of 14 takedowns. So clearly the path is there for Krzysztof Jotko to find takedowns. But I think the ground game of Jacob Malkoun is better than Krzysztof Jotko. And even with Brendan Allen getting taken down, he was able to reverse positions in round 2 and round 3 to get in top position and end up squeaking out the win. So despite the high volume in the takedown department, Brendan Allen got that win. I think he's dangerous in the submission department. I think he's very dangerous in the striking department as well. So it's just a matter of if he gets wet blanketed from the top position from Krzysztof Jotko and doesn't find these reversals. I think he gets it done. I don't know if he scores all that well if he doesn't find the finish, but I'm picking Brendan Allen here at 7,900. It's another underdog I'll get to, in a decision win over Jacob Malkoun, which was largely with him on his back. He still scored 82 points. So it's like a decent floor, but we want people that are going to get 95 up. And that's really what we want to target, especially at 7,900, garnering so much ownership.
I can't believe you name dropped Tom McCrory here. That just a name that I have not heard in such a long time. His era, so to speak, in the UFC, that was like peak fandom for me. It was at a time where it was a lot easier to follow. The cards weren't every single week. You knew basically everybody that was on every single card. You didn't have 900 people on the UFC roster. So I'm just now looking through McCrory's, fight list of Dustin Hazlett type fights, things that I know that I was watching. Akihiro Gono. I'm that's the range for me.
Hey, some good old school fights. And we got Jason in chat saying death taxes and Jotko going the distance. Yeah, he's right. I mean, like I said, if you think Jocko's going to win, you just bet the decision prop. And that's the worry, is that he's just a better minute winner against Brendan Allen. But I'm going to be siding with Brendan Allen at 7,900.
All right, we've got 3 more to go. Not like they're going to be taking the longest amount of time. We've hit on most of the main stuff, but let's hit on Sam's super chat that just came in. Pete, you know what's coming for this question, so I'm just going to read it all off. You know where you need to go. Top 2 for cash, GPPs, and underdogs. Favorite inside the distance fights, top fades, upsets, leverage, and optimals. Over under 6.5. Don't at me. Have a great one.
What up, Sam?
Woo!
Yeah, Sam's the man. Appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
And your 30 questions. We love you still, Sam.
He really gets it. One super chat is like 900 questions. Yeah. It's good.
But Sam's here every week. Sam is the man. So first, I'll start with the over under 6.5. I'm going over. I think that 13 fights, some volatility. I'm saying 7. So top 2 cash. I'm going to go with
over under 7. Is that finishes?
Yeah, that's finishes. Over on I say 7 finishes.
Odds say 6.3. So that's 7 and 6 are the 2 most.
Not a bad line then, Sam. Okay.
No, not at all.
For top 2 cash, I'm going to go Mackenzie Dern, just because of the submission, the 5 rounds. We think we know how the fight's going to go. She just has potential to break the slate. And then I might say, I'm trying to avoid having a terrible score for cash.
I think it's Mike Davis.
I was just going to say that. I want to say Mike Davis. I think I'm going to stick to my guns and say Mike Davis.
I agree that it's Dern and Davis. We're on the same page there.
I still think Davis is one of the best GPP plays, so I will stick with him. I think pound for pound, he might be one of the best GPP plays. As far as underdogs, Josh. Ooh.
I mean, Jesse Ronson's the person that I'm getting to most.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say with Jesse Ronson, man. And then I'll say Alexei Oleinik. It's an ugly week.
It is. There's not a lot at the bottom that stands out for me. I mean, Jan, I guess to a degree at 7,100, but already pulling 47% ownership. So
right,
you're getting a lot of. There's not a lot to gain from that.
Exactly. And Sam, for leverage plays, I think that Don Shainis is probably in the super low low owned, could be completely forgotten on the slate. I still think he loses, but I think that his odds are better than what they are reflected with his salary and his ownership.
Based on the top 6 odds to ownership, Daniel Santos looks like an interesting leverage play. We'll see where that actually ends up as we get closer to lock.
Okay. All right.
Did we hit everything?
Yeah, we hit everything. Sam, you're the man. Appreciate you as always. And, I think for GPPs, we also talk about which fights kind of think, I think the Trevin Jones Barcelos fight is a GPP priority for me, as is the Mike Davis Borschev fight. And that's kind of where I would say those 2 fights seem like GPP priorities.
All righty. 3 more to go. We'll move quickly here.
Yep.
We've got, let's see, Maxim Grishin at -180, Felipe Lins at +155. In this spot, we've got Grishin at 8,500, Lins at 7,700. Pretty similar, oddly enough, in top 6 odds, 17% and 24%. Ownership, a bit more of a disparity on Lins, only 10% owned. Actually, not the worst idea in the world for me if you're looking to save a little bit of salary just based on the top 6 odds. What are you seeing for this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm done with Felipe Lins. I mean,
Yeah,
he got the win over Marcin Prachnio, but like he should have finished Marcin Prachnio, and his cardio completely abandoned him. He ended up going the takedown well. Went 4 of 11. Yeah, he got the win. Round 3 looked horrible, and I was very, very concerned that he was not going to survive. I think that Maxim Grishin is a tough test for anybody because he possesses decent takedown defense, strong striking, and he's just well-rounded. So I think that Maxim Grishin 8,500 is the play. I don't hate a light heavyweight underdog. I just think that Felipe Lins kind of, grabbed the bag in PFL and has not been the same ever since. And I've been a backer of him, and now I'm kind of getting off, and I'm saying that Maxim Grishin is going to pick up the win over him.
The only appealing thing to me is that the odds for TKO KO are relatively close to each other, which gives you your out at 7,700.
Mm-hmm.
It's the low ownership for me, though. At 10%, Lins becomes interesting. If he gets up to, 17, 18, then he's just sort of a guy for me. It won't end up being a stand. But when it's going to be that low, that's where things start getting a little bit more interesting to me. We start to see that gap between top 6 odds. Yeah,
I mean, I think that Grishin can survive just because he survived 15 minutes with Jacoby and William Knight. Yeah. Obviously not, those fights, every fight's different. So you can't really have that type of MMA math. But I will say that Lins didn't finish Marcin Prachnio. And I view Maxim Grishin in such higher regard than Marcin Prachnio. So give me Grishin here at 8,500.
And then we'll close it out with the final fight that we had data for. We have 2 fights left to talk about, but this is the final fight that we actually had before this show started. Randy Costa, Guido Canetti, 9,200 to 7K. Costa, big time favorite here. We haven't talked about a 9K fighter in quite a while, since back at Sadiq Yusuff. So this is a little bit of a different spot. Big time favorite. 31% ownership coming to Costa, 12% coming to Canetti. I'm getting to a lot of Costa at 9,200. What are you doing with Randy Costa? Who is your preferred Randy today?
Well, I'll tell you what, Randy is a friend of mine, and one of my coach's fighters as well. So naturally, I'm going to be rooting and cheering for Randy Costa. I think you have to recognize what Randy Costa is. And this is exactly what I would say to him as well. He knows this. He goes out there and he's a banger. And the pacing of his fights is crazy, because if he doesn't find an early finish, I think that, fatigue makes a coward of us all. And when you start to get tired, you start to make mistakes. And if your opponent is not nearly as tired as you, next thing you know, you're losing a fight. So it's a volatile matchup. I think the 9,200 is reflective with his skills, but I don't think that he's a trustworthy candidate, if I'm being honest. I think that this should be like mid 8,000, mid 7,000 for Canetti. I'm expecting Randy Costa to go out there and win. I'm hoping he does. He's massive for the division. He hits really hard, but I really don't think that anybody can go in there and just lock him in and think that he is super safe. He should win this fight, 75% of the time, 100%. I think that it's just, we've seen a lot out of him. If he doesn't find the early finish and he's met with resistance, you're a great hammer, how are you as the nail? Can you overcome being the nail in certain situations? And, Guido Canetti is a terribly skilled fighter. Let's call it what it is. He gets finished just as much. But he is coming off a decent performance against Chris Mutino. And if I had to say, a sneaky path for Guido Canetti is if he could go the takedown route, land 2 to 4 takedowns as he has done in some fights in the past. That's where you can really negate the skills of Randy Costa. So I'll be making a group. I'll have a homer pick of Randy Costa, but I would recommend you guys make a group and get to one of these fighters, because this is one of the best fights to target on the entire slate from a GPP perspective.
Yeah, Costa like minus 140 to win by TKO or KO. That is very, very interesting. And that's what we're seeing in our top 6 odds. 44% likelihood to be a top 6 fighter, 31% ownership. We are talking about my most exposed fighter, 1 percentage point ahead of Mike Davis. So those are my 2 most exposed for this moment right now.
I think from an upside standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. I like Mike Davis a lot because of his price tag. If Mike Davis had a 9,200 price tag, then we could be talking about Costa being one of the best pound for pound values. But because it's, it sits with Mike Davis, I really like Mike Davis a lot. Costa should win here. The UFC wants him to win here. And we'll have to see, but I don't expect this fight to go 15 minutes.
Well, I hope you're right, given my ownership.
Yeah, I don't expect it to go 15 minutes. And if it does somehow, I would like to think that Canetti probably just completely out wrestles Costa for 15 minutes.
Let's close it out now. This fight got salaries just before we went live. Chelsea Chandler, Julia Stoliarenko, basically a coin flip fight. And the salaries say the same, 8,200 and 8K. They were not a part of the data before we got started, so I'm going to bring even less to the table than I do for the rest of these fights. I can quote lines because that's in front of me. None of these gals likely to pick up any sort of major finish. Stoliarenko plus 300-ish to win by submission. Chandler a little bit more likely to do it via strikes. The opposite sides are not likely. Fight goes to decision, a little more than a 50-50 shot. Do you like this fight at all from a DFS perspective now that it's been added? What do you see here? Any leans?
Yeah, so I always like the 8,200, 8,000 fight. Just naturally, it helps out my lineups, helps me build balanced lineups in a way, but also, you're targeting that pick'em fight. And if you pick correctly, then you could have a ton of edge on the entire field. I will say that this seems like a massive step up in competition for Chelsea Chandler. Relatively green in a way. She's 4-1. Aggressively and offensively, she's the superior striker here. I think that Yulia Stoliarenko has improved striking, that has developed. The pop and power resides with Chelsea Chandler, but the best skill set in this entire matchup is Stoliarenko's submission skills. And plus 300 for her to win via submission, I think is a steal, because when the fight hits the mat, she is so live to find submissions over everybody. One of the best armbar practitioners out there, kind of like a Ronda Rousey-esque in a way when it comes to that nice judo into the armbar finishes. Nobody wants to back Yulia Stoliarenko. I have to tell you, I was pretty surprised when I saw the odds. I think it's just because people don't, have faith in Stoliarenko's skill set. And I don't know, like she can get controlled against the cage for a while. But even if she's on her back, she could pick up a submission finish over the purple belt and Chelsea Chandler. No problem at all. It's just, does she get knocked out on the feet? I don't think so. I think that Yulia Stoliarenko at 8,200 is going to be a fighter I'm going to get to plenty. I will be betting this fight. I will be betting Yulia Stoliarenko to win via submission, just because I think that there's value on that, despite how volatile this entire matchup is. Stoliarenko training with the 209 guys, and I don't care. I really think that Stoliarenko has just fought better competition. And you can clearly see that when you go on anything and you dive into their records.
Is there anything else for this card that you want to touch on before we get out of here? We went hour 15.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, some of these matchups are just completely disgusting, but we have to talk about them.
13 fights is a lot.
Yeah, and 13 bad fights is a lot. So it's not like we're talking about great fights. So we're trying to really just discuss both sides of it. And this is a GPP card all day. I would not be playing this card in cash. I would probably be just getting, I think a lot of underdogs hit. I really do. So
Okay.
I'm going to be aggressive with the underdogs, despite my beliefs and how I think these fights are going to go. You know, I make a chunk of my lineups based on how I'm predicting, but we also try to, you know, just lean on predictions a little too much. Like, and that's where if you're a 150 max player, you can look at our data on stokastic.com, combining that with the fantasycruncher.com add-on. And I really think if you combine everything, you can have a ton of success in MMA DFS. And that's what I plan on doing this weekend.
There we go. I can't wait either. I know I'll be watching it. I don't have anything else going on this weekend. We are getting the remnants of the Jason Floyd hurricane, but we're just gonna get water. So I'm just gonna hang out. It's just gonna rain all weekend. I'm not gonna want to go out, so I'm just gonna sit around and watch some MMA. I can't wait.
Yeah, there we go. We got sharks swimming in the streets, and Jason's gonna be back on Saturday. So thankfully, it seems like everything's good on his end.
Yes,
and hoping the best for everybody else down there. But yeah, crazy times, man.
Not ideal. As someone that lives in a hurricane area, it's not fun when it's coming. It's not fun when it gets here. So best wishes to anybody that's been affected so far, because it's a lot. I can say it from experience. I've got nothing else to add here. So thank you to PrizePicks for being the sponsor. Make sure you guys are watching MMA Live Before Lock this Saturday. Pete and Jason will be back breaking this bad boy down. But for now, good luck this weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Hit the like button on the way out the door, and we will talk to you again later on.